Christian Parenting.
Welcome to the Christian Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Steph Thurling. I'm the Executive Director of Christian Parenting, a mom of 3, and I am so glad that you're here. This is a place where you can bring your real self, no matter what that looks like today, and be given the space, resources, and encouragement you need to set aside perfection and grow into the perfectly imperfect parent God made you to be. So there are a lot of people that go into the making of this podcast. And today I get to introduce you to one of those people, my wonderful producer, Jeanette Tapley. So she produces this podcast, which means that she goes in and grabs the audio and she edits it. She edits out any weird things that I say or awkward pauses, and she adds music and all the things that take it from raw audio to what you are hearing today. So she also produces a lot of other podcasts in our network, and she has her own podcast that's on the Christian Parenting Podcast Network called the Moms at Work Podcast. I absolutely adore Jeanette, and I know that you will too. This episode just feels like you're sitting down with a friend for coffee, and that's probably because Jeanette is everybody's friend. She is truly, truly great. And today we are talking about finding joy in every season of parenting, from being a working mom of little kids to a working mom of teens to parenting teens and everything in between. But don't tune out if you don't have teens yet, because we talk a lot about preparing for these days and the importance of establishing rules that work for your family and your priorities. Jeanette leaves us with some of her favorite tips and wisdom for parenting through these teen years, and I just hope that you loved this conversation as much as I loved having it. Hello, Jeanette. Welcome to the Christian Parenting Podcast.
Hello, my friend. This is so fun.
I know. Okay, Jeanette, what people probably don't know is that without you, this podcast does not work.
Well, I appreciate that. You show up weekly. I just clean it up a little bit.
So Jeanette is my editor, my producer of this podcast. So I record with a guest, and she cuts things out when I stumble or say something that is just silly or like incorrect. And then she adds the music and the intro and all the things that go into making this show good. And you do it all so well and so joyfully.
Oh, I love it. I mean, what a good job. Like, what a fun job I have to like sit and just listen to parenting content. Like it serves me so much, and it's a really it's a cool job. Like, I get to learn so much. Now, my Amazon cart, due to the books that we talk about on the shows, is not, it's not lacking, I should say.
Right.
But it's fun. It's a really fun job.
Did I ever tell you that my husband wanted to put me on like a book budget, because I would listen to things and get so many recommendations that I would get a book like every day. And he was like, you can't do this anymore. Yeah. So yeah, I feel that.
And you can't read every book. And in all reality, we shouldn't read every book. That's too much. That's way too much input.
That is true. You got to taper it a little bit.
Yeah.
That's a wise piece of advice to start us out. Don't read every book. It'll be too overwhelming.
Yeah, that would be so much. Ugh, I would not be. My kids would not be a fan.
No, you would be kind of like all over the place in your parenting.
Yeah.
So just read the ones that will serve you well. Yeah. Okay. We're going to talk more about what you do. But first, let's tell us about you. Tell us about your family. And then you know what's coming. You have to describe your family in a word or a phrase.
Yeah. Jeanette Tapley, Jesse, my husband and I have been married almost 20 years, which is wild. I feel like I was a senior in high school, and I feel like I am a senior in high school. Like, that was just yesterday. So I don't know how I then have a child of that age. He's 18. Our first one is 18. That's just so crazy. We have a 16-year-old, and then our daughter Zoe is 14, and she is adopted from the Congo, and she is deaf. So we are a family of giants. My husband and my boys are really tall. And so you just see this tall wall coming, and then we're all signing and kind of like hand gesturing, and you just see the Tapleys coming a mile away. Like, there's just no missing us. And it's a lot of fun. And so we have 3 teenagers. We live in Central Texas. I'm a podcaster, producer, writer, speaker, all the fun things. But the role that I've loved the most in the last year is it's just been owning like the content creator side of it, and really sitting in that like like I'm not an influencer, but I love to create content for my people. And it's just been a really fun time. So that's like me in a nutshell. I'm a really good friend. I love friendship. And yeah, that's just me.
You gotta give me your word though.
Oh, our word. I know everybody does that for you. My word or phrase. I think the word or phrase to describe the Tapleys is we are a really fun time. Like when our friends say that the Tapleys know how to have fun, that feels like the biggest compliment to us. And so yeah, I think we're a fun time.
I love that. And we're going to actually talk about that a little bit today, especially with teenagers. So it's perfect.
Yeah.
When we talk, we typically cover a few things. So we talk frequently. And these are the things that Jeanette and I talk about when we talk. Podcasting, of course.
Yep.
Christian
Obviously.
parenting, of course. The status of our homes and families.
Yeah.
And Taylor Swift. Like these four are like our four core things that we talk about. The important things. And so
Obviously.
I'm sure those things will come up today.
Yeah. I love that when we talk, I can send you like a Taylor Swift line. Like, nice. And I know that you're reading that in that tone. And I just like that to me is like the depth of our friendship.
It's true. It's true. And we always send each other updates. It's great.
Yeah.
It's great.
the
So if you're not a Taylor Swift fan, that's okay. We
Yeah, we
just
forgive
happen
you.
to be. We forgive you. We'll move past it.
Yeah.
But today I want to talk to you. We're going to talk a little about teens. I want to talk about being a working mom.
Yeah.
And I really want the focus to be on joy, like and joy and fun, and how we find joy and fun every day as a mom, as a working mom, as a mom of teens, all of those things. Because you host the Moms at Work podcast, which is in the Christian Parenting Podcast Network. So let's start there. Let's start with working moms. What is your encouragement for moms who are stuck in kind of the working mom life struggle of trying to find balance and joy? Because I get stuck in it. Like I honestly get stuck in the hard when it comes to work. The like, I'll never get caught up on anything. I don't know how to do this. Like, am I doing anything well? Like I get stuck in the hard. So how do we not get stuck in the hard?
Oh man. And like it's one of those things you and I talked before we hit record about like forgetting what it was like back then. You know, like how did I do all this back then? And so my kids are teenagers. So I have to remember that. But they weren't always teenagers. And so I actually really like that my kids see me work. Or I like that last week we were touring a college and we did a college tour. We came home and I was like, all right, I got to go in my office and I have to get like 3 hours worth of work done after that. So I think it shows them balance in a way of I can sacrifice here, but I have to make that up. So I think that shows them time management. And I think that that's really beneficial. When my kids were littler, I would tell them exactly like, I'm working for this. Like, I'm working towards our next Disney trip. Everything that I make right now is going towards this, or can be as easy as like groceries. You know, you see this, like this is what like the cost of life is. And it's, I don't say that to them to like hold anything over their heads, but for them to see that it's just not, it's not meaningless, but it's also very purposeful. And so I think to not get stuck in it, we have to have conversations, but I also think that we have to have boundaries. For a long time, I wouldn't work at night if my kids were around, which they're always around. But if it was like dinner time, it was like dinner time. I didn't have my computer out. I was really, really purposeful about not being on my phone. But at the same time, teaching them like this is work time. And teaching them that for like them, like school time is school time for you. If you don't have homework after school, cool. Then you get to do whatever you want with your time. And just teaching them the time management that I needed to learn was really important because I wanted to find that balance. But I also think that balance is so, what balanced well yesterday is not going to balance well today. And I think like letting go of that kind of facade of like, I could do this, but I can't do it all the time. And then the biggest thing I've learned this year has been I can juggle, you know, a few things really well, but sometimes I'm called to lay a ball down and not juggle it anymore. And letting go of some stuff has been really hard. And I love that ball. That I want to juggle that ball for the rest of my life, but I can't. And I've actually been called to lay it down. And in laying it down, I get to pick something else up. So I feel like that is like the reminder of seasons that I've had to have in my life.
Yeah. Well, and I like that reminder of seasons because even like I'm recalling, I think it was like a week or two ago, you texted me a question like kind of late at night on like a Saturday or
Yeah.
something. And you were like, hey, sorry, you can get back to you later, but I'm working because my teenagers aren't here. So I
Yeah.
actually have time. And
Yeah.
so what maybe didn't work when your kids were little works now because your
Yeah.
season of life has changed.
Yeah, and my husband
And that's
works
great.
shift work. So if he's
Hmm.
like if he's on nights and the kids have plans, then I'm like I can do one of two things. I can take care of myself, which I do often and love, or I can work and make sure that I'm caught up on what I need to do. So it's just a matter of
Yeah.
using that time wisely.
Yeah. Because then you can use your work time during the day for other
Yeah.
tasks or other
Yeah.
self care, which is great. Okay. Now I'm wondering, do you think that it was easier to be a working? I mean, this is probably an unfair question.
Yeah.
Because it changes. But do you think it was easier to be a working mom when your kids were little or older?
Today, I think it's easier when they're older because I can have a conversation with them and be like, I need you to in the kindest way possible, I need you to leave me alone. And there's not as much guilt in that these days. But when they were littler, I had clearer boundaries, and I think that was
Mm,
easier. Like I had to be done at 4 so that I could take them to soccer and piano. Like there was no margin for like, well, if I work a little extra, I could do this. And so I think yes and no. Like I think it was easier because I had better boundaries, but I can also be like, give me an hour to get this stuff done.
yeah. And we are talking also today about before we recorded about how like I'm in the stage where everyone's in after school activities.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's like there are at least 3 sports a night every night,
Yeah.
if not more, which is just insane.
Yeah. That's a lot on families. And I look I don't want to be shaming at all, but I don't look back fondly at that time. Like it was a lot. And Jesse worked shift work. So there's times where I was doing
Yeah.
it 100% on my own, and there was times
Mhm.
where dividing and conquering. And then there was times where it was like, you're in 5th grade, so you're probably fine to be dropped off, right? You're good. If you need me, find a soccer mom, she can call me. I got to take this kid over here. So it was a lot. And it was only a couple of years, but it was exhausting. It's a lot.
Yeah. I think it's okay to say that you didn't love one season as much as
Yeah.
others. Like I love this season. It's insane,
Good.
but I
Yeah.
love it. Like I think it's so fun. But I
Yeah,
didn't
good.
love the baby and toddlers like some
Yeah.
people do. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I think that's
Good.
just part of parenting. Not that I didn't enjoy it, but it just when I look back, I'm like, that wasn't my favorite.
Yeah.
This is my favorite so
Oh
far.
yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's wise to even say that. Like, yeah, not every season's gonna hit and be like, man, this was the best season ever. But
Yeah.
that season, yeah, I love that. That's good. That's a good reminder.
Yeah. Okay. But you're in teens. So let's talk about teens. I think you are officially the strictest mom on the internet. Am I right?
I am. My TikTok bio says TikTok strictest mom, and people are like, that's not a flex. And I'm like, but you're here. So what are you gonna do about it?
Yes. And obviously, I say that in jest, but you
Yeah.
did go viral for some of your rules that you have at your house, and people went nuts over whether it was good parenting or basically your kids are going to stop talking to you. There was like no in between. So,
There's absolutely zero in between. I am and it's funny, depending on the platform that you are on. On Instagram, I'm applauded, man. Good parenting. On TikTok, my kids are going to run away and never talk to me again.
isn't that so interesting?
Yeah, it's really fun.
I mean, demographics, but
Yeah.
let's talk about being a teenager in your house.
Yeah.
What does it look like to be a Tapley teen?
The thing is, they are the coolest people. They're so fun,
Mm.
and they're really delightful humans. They think that we're very strict, which is funny because I'm learning that strict means something different to every kid and to every household.
Mhm.
Um, and even within our home, each kid says strict is something different, which is funny to me. But to be a Tapley teen is let's start with the good things. A Tapley teen doesn't pay their own gas bill. Like we front their gas money because we ask them to do things for us. So we're like, we'll pay for your gas. A Tapley teen has to charge their phone downstairs. They don't get to charge their devices in their bedroom. We don't do devices in their bedroom. There's no PS5, no computer TVs up in their bedroom. I believe in really good sleep hygiene, and sleeping with the TV on isn't great for you. It's not good for your brain. I don't judge anybody who does that. you make your choices. And then the other, which my son had his girlfriend over yesterday, and they were watching a show on the couch, and I like was working, so I popped out, and Ezekiel, it was Ezekiel, and he I saw a blanket, and he goes, I don't have a blanket, she does, because the biggest rule in our house, like with girls, is one person per blanket. And I said it weird online, so I get comments all the time like, you want your kids to be freezing to death? I'm like, oh my gosh. And so it's just like, it's a cuddle rule, like it's just to keep things not weird at our house. Like, it's funny. So he's like, she's got a blanket, I don't. And his girlfriend's like, I was cold. It was cute. So that's like the basis of our rules of like not just like the basic family rules that we kind of like set for our family. And most people are like, yeah, that's pretty normal stuff. And I'm like, yeah, totally. The
TikTok
internet.
does
Oh,
not
they
agree.
haven't. Yeah, they had, and we changed it since then because we have an 18-year-old now, so we are teaching better boundaries or learning curves, and so they have an hour of screen time, which just means that they can't scroll for more than an hour on TikTok and Instagram. That's really it. They were always allotted more time, but we have changed that since May because they're a little bit older and we're teaching them
to regulate on their own.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's what it's like being a tablet teen. But honestly, our kids are really fun. They're really silly. They have so much freedom. A lot of our friends are like, you aren't even the strictest in our friend group. I'm like, I know. So there's a good time. And we have lots of kids always around our house, which we enjoy.
Yes. It's always fun to have a full house.
Yeah.
Why do you think that people went so crazy about your parenting rules? Like, I feel like there has to be something here that parents had like parents and just young adults in general had a reaction to a mom getting on the internet and saying, I have rules for my teens.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is just, and I don't even really know what free range parenting means because it doesn't like does not compute kind of thing. But I think the fact that a lot of people thought we were removing their privacy. Like they can't even go upstairs with their phone. It's like, obviously they can take their phones upstairs, but we don't want prolonged activity on phones in bedroom. Like that's not safe. It doesn't nurture their soul. So I honestly think so many of the DMs I got from nice people, because they were like having to privately message me, because they didn't want to get like roasted in the comments, was like, this would have protected me from X. This could have these kind of rules could have saved me from a porn addiction, or I was, what's the word I'm looking for? Like not courted, but like groomed in a way.
Groomed, yeah.
These kind of things protect. So I think when people think we're removing their privacy, or even just saying this is your boundary, people are like, that's insane. How dare you? And I look at it as guardrails. We have guardrails around our kids so that they don't fall over this cliff. Like we don't want them to do that. So the guardrail is there to like, oh, you hit that. Hold on, come back. Like get back on the road. And I just think that this generation, and I hate saying that because it like ages us so much, and we are young and cool. This generation just does not understand the heart of parents protecting them, because they're like, we don't need protection, we're fine. And I'm like, yeah, you do. Your frontal lobe is not fully developed and you need protection.
Well, I think even of your comment earlier about like dropping your child off at a sporting event, right? Like, so when your child is a toddler, you're not dropping them off anywhere but daycare, or grandma's house or the babysitter, like you're not just dropping them off. And then as they get older, then you're like, okay, I can drop you off at soccer practice with your trusted coach where there are other adults who will help you if practice is canceled mid-practice, whatever. And then eventually as they get older than that, then I'm going to drop you off at the mall or wherever they go now. But you're not going to just start with that. And we so often overprotect our kids in the physical world and underprotect them in the digital world. And so if we have that concept of like you gain more independence for being dropped off places,
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we have that same concept for technology?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I've yet to talk to somebody who says, "Oh no, the internet is so safe." Like I would give my toddler full access. Nobody is saying that. We're
Right.
definitely more focused on screen time and like what screen time is doing to our kids, but we're not focused as like a whole on what the internet is doing to our kids and
Mhm.
how the internet is chasing them down and how it is just not safe. It's
Yeah.
I There's times like I mean when this whole thing went viral, like I didn't feel safe on the internet, like showing up. And so it was like I was really conscious of where I was posting from, like what you could see behind me. Like you just have to be so mindful. And it's like these people are screaming at me to like give my kids more time. And I'm like, and I'm afraid. I'm like, hold on a second. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
No, this doesn't make sense.
Right. So we are well into the school year, and if you are looking for a little extra support for your kids and their academics, or if your kids are looking for an extra challenge in school, I highly recommend IXL Learning. It has truly been a game changer for my family. IXL Learning is an online learning program for kids ages pre-K to 12th grade, and it covers math, language arts, science, and social studies. IXL is designed to help kids really understand and master topics in a fun way with positive feedback. And the very best part is IXL is so easy for parents. One site gets you all you need, and IXL customizes learning for each child and their needs. Everything on IXL is organized by grade, subject, topic, and even subtopic, making it simple to find activities for the exact skill that you're covering. And IXL offers instant feedback and explanations of new topics as the kids use the program. So you can feel really confident that your kids will gain an understanding of the skills that they're learning. My kids have all benefited from the program in preparing and feeling really ready for tests in school. You can make an impact on your child's learning and get IXL now. And Christian Parenting Podcast listeners get an exclusive 20% off an IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/today. Again, you can visit IXL.com/today to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price. Okay, besides establishing rules, because every family has to establish their own rules and figure out what works for them. Because you can't have a million rules because eventually you're just going to be exhausted by saying no all the time. You got to figure out your ones that are your priorities. So besides figuring out your rule priorities and establishing those, what is the hardest part of parenting teens?
I think the hardest part is they are so cool and we want to be friends with them. And you want to be the cool parent. Like you want to like show up and hang out and do the cool thing and be with them. But we can't yet. And like we are transitioning from parenting to mentor or parents to coach to mentor.
Yeah.
And so we're like in that like coach to mentor season right now, like where we will fully like mentor next year. But this like parent to coach season is really hard because it's easy for us just to be like, let's just be friends. Let's just call it. Just be friends now. I don't this is too hard. And especially with our 16-year-old, like they're just so fun. So you just want to be their friends. And there's just still so much work that needs to be done before we launch them that if we were to be friends, we would probably miss a few things.
Yeah. And I feel like that can go the opposite way too. Like obviously my kids are younger than yours. But I've talked to a lot of people on this podcast and in general who are further ahead of me in parenting. And I feel like in general, as your kids get older, you either have a hard time saying exactly what you're saying is trying to be friends too soon.
Yeah.
Or not moving into that season and trying to parent for too long. Like parent in the hands-on, establishing rules for your kids' way.
Yeah.
Obviously you parent forever.
Yeah, you parent forever for sure. Like you're always going to be mom and dad, but there is this and something Jesse and I have said about his parents. His parents transitioned us into friends really, really well. And we all got married pretty young, but it was like a really smooth transition to like friends over parental figures. And so it's something that we think about, but it is easy to do it in this early teens, especially because we're speaking similar languages because of the internet. So we're seeing similar videos. We're laughing at the same things. We're watching the same shows together. We're going to the same concerts. so we're doing this like really intimate life together. So it's like, oh yeah, we can be buddies. Like this is amazing. But then as soon as you have to parent, it's like, oh, hold on, how do I how do I do this without creating friction? And I mean, we were wanting to be our kids' friends when they were 13 because it was like, oh dang, you're getting really cool. Let's do this. And then it was like, oh, hold on. Like there's some things we can be friendly in, like we can be pals, but I can't fully be your friend yet because I have to parent you.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like the heart of what you're saying is not that you just want to be friends with your kids and not parent them anymore. The heart behind what you're saying is that your teenagers are fun and you find joy in them in a different way than when your kids were little. So what do you think is the most joyful part of parenting teens?
I think seeing, and this is also like one of the hardest seasons as we get ready to walk this out, but like seeing the Lord move in their lives where you're like, oh, I had nothing to do with that. Like that was all you. That was all you and the Lord. That's all your relationship. And then like talking about like, what does this next year look like for you? Like, where do you feel God calling you? But then also trusting that like that's a hard one for me to like sit back and be like, so God's calling you where to do what? That's weird. I didn't hear that. Like God didn't tell me that. And he's like, no, it's really not up to the Lord to tell you that. It's like my life. And I'm like, so I think that's a hard one. But it's also, I mean, that's the best. Like it's seeing the fruit from the years of Veggie Tales and trusting that like taking them to church actually like created something in them. Like when we were touring a college campus, he's like, well, let's like drive around and see some of the churches nearby that like I could check out. And it was like, oh my gosh. Like it's almost like this moment of like, we did it. Like we can't quite say it yet, but like, oh my gosh, it's happening. And that's so like there's so much joy in seeing the fruit in your parenting. And I think we see that when our kids say sorry without prompting, or when they make things right with their siblings, or when you hear them unprompted say yes ma'am to a stranger. It's like, oh my gosh, we did it. Like there's just so much joy in like the fruit there.
Yeah. My oldest loves to remind me that he's going to go to high school in 2 years.
Ugh.
And I did, for the first time the other day, I was driving him home from school and I was just like, oh my gosh, you are going to go to high school? And are you going to keep your faith as active as it is now? Like, are you going to, like, I have faith that you will. And, we talk about the Lord a lot at home and I pray for my kids all the time, but there is kind of this like, oh my gosh, eventually you have to do this on your own.
Yeah.
And I guess my kids have just been young enough that it's been so far away and now it's coming closer that I'm like, oh my gosh, they really do have to make it their own eventually. And what a gift to see that in real time. Like, that's so great.
Yeah. And ours was a pretty Ezekiel doesn't mind me sharing the story, so that's why I'm allowed to share it, because that's one thing. Being on the internet, I like run everything by them, and there's very many times that they cancel my post. But Ezekiel, his sophomore year, actually, I think right around the time you and I met, Steph, was just really struggling. His mental health took just a terrible turn, and he was just really struggling with depression in a way that I have never experienced. My husband has never experienced, and he looked at us and was like, I don't think that I can struggle like this and believe in God. And I was like, okay. And then he also said, I don't think I'll ever find joy again, because joy and happiness are different. And these little things, I can find happiness here, but I can't find joy anymore. And so that was like, as parents, we're like, maybe we missed it somewhere, or what is this happening? Like, what is actually happening? But now 2 years past, almost 3, he can say like, that is when God became real to me. Like that struggle, that depth, like the valley of the shadow of death, like I walked through it with the Lord, and now I know, like now my faith is my own. And I'm like, oh, praise God that happened within our home, because I can't, like, I know friends who have done this their freshman year of college and had these struggles. And I'm like, okay. And so now as we look at college, he's like, well, it's important for me to look for this, this, and this, because this is my faith and this is what I need to do. And I'm like, okay, yay. Good. But at the same time, now he can also say like, this is affecting my mental health, so I need to make sure I'm doing this right, or I need to make sure I'm doing like aiming this way. And so I think that it's so hard to think about our kids like taking their faith for themselves. And I'm a pastor's kid, so like, you know, it was always told like, you're gonna have to do this, and I was like, yeah, I'm good. Like that, it wasn't a struggle for me to be like, no, yeah, I believe this. But for him to like wrestle and see it, and for God to be made so real to him at that age, I was like, okay, next kid, please. like moving on. And so it is like, I don't want people to fear that moment, but I also want them to pray for like the strength of like, when their faith is shaken, it's all we can do is like just know that Jesus is going after that lost sheep. And it's the same thing with the guardrails. Like, we've done everything we can, but he busted through that guardrail, and we have to like look over the side and be like, Jesus will go get him, because that is the faith that we've instilled in our family and in him, and just knowing that like it'll happen because that's what Jesus said he would do.
Yeah. Well, and so many of us come to make our faith our own or to know the Lord. I came to know the Lord through the loss of my best friend when I was 11.
Mm-hmm.
And like, nobody wants to watch their kid go through that.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to watch their teenager go through major depression.
Yeah.
But how do you keep hope as a parent during that time when you're like, this is not what I signed up for? Like, I don't want this. Like, I'll take it. I'll do whatever. Yeah. Like, this isn't what I signed up for.
Yeah. Our sermon on Sunday was actually kind of about this in a way, but it was the disciples rushing to Jesus during the storm. He said, let's go to the other side. So he says, this is where we're going, and we have to trust Jesus. When he says, let's do this, like, we are doing that. Like in my brain, it's like, if Jesus says, let's go to the other side, that means we're going to get to the other side. And so let's go do this. I'm like, okay, cool. And then the storm hits and the disciples wake him up. Don't you care about us? We're going to die. And he calms the storm and he says, where's your faith? Like, don't you believe yet? And so I let me grab my Bible and I can cut this out. But our pastor asked us a question, and I wrote it down because it was just like, it was just so good. It was like, he's in the boat with you. Like, if we believe that he is in parenting with us, and we believe that he has taken us this far, and we believe that he is carrying us through, like, he's in the boat and he's not afraid. Like, Jesus is not afraid. And it's like, do you still have no faith? And it's like, don't you care, Jesus? Don't you care about my kids? And the something I heard over and over this summer is like, God doesn't have grandchildren. Like, they are his children just as much as they are ours. Yeah. And so it's like, oh, okay. And just as much as I am his. Like, it's like, my kids are not like his great grandchildren. Like, he's like, oh yeah, precious little Timmy over there. No, it's like, no, they're his children just as much as I am his child. So it's like, don't you care? And he's like, I said we were going over there. Like, where's your faith? Do you still have none? So it's like, okay. So that's where like I hold my faith in that. Like, I don't know that my kids are going to, you know, turn out amazing or anything, but I know that I'm holding on to the faith that like Jesus said, here's these children that I'm going to give to you, and you get to raise them. And when things go awry and when things are messed up, I just have to be like, Jesus, are you afraid? Are you good? Because if you're good, then I'm good. And I'm just going to hold the course. Like, you said, we're going over here, so I'm going to go over here. Yeah.
That's good. I love the concept of God doesn't have grandkids too, because you talk to grandparents. What do grandparents do? They break all the rules. Yep. They give your kids all the dessert, like all the sugar cereal that they never let you have, you know, like, and that's not what God's doing for our kids. He's not being like, here's the best, most fun path.
Yeah.
He's giving us the real path, the good path.
Yeah.
That's good. I never really thought about it that way, but that's like a very good visual for when our kids are struggling.
And for me, because it was like, well, don't, like, well, they're mine. And God's like, excuse me? Huh?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, they're yours.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to remember that sometimes when you're in the midst of it.
Yeah.
Okay. 2 more questions before we go.
Yeah.
First, since my oldest, as he loves to remind me, is going into high school in 2 years. He's 12. What is your advice for me very quickly coming in to the teenage years?
Does he have good friends?
Yes.
Invite him in. Invite those friends in. I love seeing my kids' friends grow up. And because I get to nurture them as much as their moms are nurturing my kid. And so I think invite them in. I mean, and your son, like my kids don't love like when I'm like, invite your friends over. They're like, ugh. But they're starting to bring them over now. And so invite them in. Just always be a safe home. Whether it's like they're like stopping there to go somewhere else, or whether you're like, I'll carpool you guys. Where do you want to go? Do you want to go to a movie? I'll drop you guys off. Like being that like presence and seeing little glimpses into their lives, because kids, I heard who liked who, or who was like who's talking to who, and then I'd be like, hey, wait, I thought so and so was dating that person, and I would just like interject little bits, and they're like, oh no, Mrs. Tapley, that da 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 da. Like it was fun to hear the little snippets and just to kind of hover, and then like interject when I could. One of my son's best friends the other day was going through a breakup, and I was like, hey, can I give you my 2 cents? And he's like, absolutely. I was like, here's the red flags I saw. And I was like, and I asked my kids, how often are my red flags right? And they're like, her red flags are always right. And it's funny, but it's just like, it's those little bits of trust that the teens have given us because we have known them for so long, because we have done that life together. And if they're struggling with friends, or if they're not finding those people, that's like, who are you sitting with at lunch? What team can you join? Like trying to find the ways to nurture and not force friendships upon them. But I'll say like in having the friendships and being around those friends, like I got to spend, as TikTok's strictest mom, and I took my son and his best friend to Lollapalooza in Chicago. I got to spend my son's best friend's 18th birthday with them. So we got to be like, so we got to do that. And so it's fun to see these kids get big, but man, all of us moms that are with these boys are looking at the spring and like, how are they going to break up? How do we send one away to another state, and one's going on his Mormon mission? How do we do this? And so, but we're all doing it together. And so I find so much peace and joy in that. But I also look at these boys and I'm like, these friendships are going to carry you forever.
Yeah. So Jill Jefferson, who works with us at Christian Parenting, I ask her, she has older kids too. So I'm always like, Jill, what do I do? Tell me how to do this really well. She always says, make sure you have the good snacks.
Yes. Oh, for sure.
So
for sure. We had one of our friends they worked together at camp, and so his mom would give me like $70 a week to like feed kids. And so I always had Red Bull. This summer I had all the Red Bull. All the Red Bull and the Monsters. And he came by the house because he was spending the night. He walked straight into the pantry, and I said, oh, Red Bull's only a summer thing. He didn't even say hello to us yet. He was walking straight to the pantry to grab his Red Bull. And I was like, sorry, it's only a summer thing. And he was like, dang it, Mrs. Tapley. I was like, sorry. But yeah, always have the good snacks. Always have the good snacks. And Jill told me that she hides the blankets when people come over.
She does. She does hide the blankets.
So I just say 1 blanket per person, but she hides them.
Strictest mom. Christian Parenting, strictest mom. Okay, my last question. And I usually start the podcast with this question, but we're trying a new thing. And we're trying it with you because we can.
Yeah.
What is one thing you want every parent to know?
Not every battle is worth fighting. That's really hard. It's hard to pick your battle, but it's just sometimes I think like, why am I saying no to this? Like not every battle is worth fighting. And so yeah, that's as parents, I feel like if we can decipher like, why am I saying no? Is this out of fear? Is this out of protection? Is this out of just because my desire, my will is this? It's like, not every battle is worth fighting.
You know what we always say at our house is, well, this is, Trevor and I will say this to each other, is if we're trying to decide if a battle is worth fighting in the moment, we'll look at each other and be like, is this a roller coaster you're willing to get on? And it's like, oh. Sometimes I'm like, yes, I'm getting on the roller coaster. And other times I'm like, yeah, actually, it's really not. It's really not.
And I think that you will find the roller coasters as they get bigger, and they're not scary. Like people talk so negatively of raising teens, and it really, it's hard, but it's fun. it's a delight. Like if you can find the right roller coasters, it's a good time. Like who doesn't love, a day on roller coasters? I love it. But I think it's a matter of like, which roller coasters are worth fighting? And that's why you have like those base rules, because then like as they get bigger, it's like, okay, let's try a little bit more. Like let's give you more of this. Okay, well, let's pull back now. Like when you have those base rules and you can say like, man, you got on that roller coaster and I'm riding it with you because I'm right and you're wrong, because I'm an adult and I can see 4 years ahead of you. Like I know better. And so, it's fun. I just think that parenting teens doesn't have to be scary. Like preparing for high school doesn't have to be scary. I think that, it's kind of like raising girls. People are like, oh, buckle up. And yeah, my daughter is not my easiest child. But it's not scary.
It's just different.
Yeah.
Okay. Jeanette, tell us how we can connect with you, where we can listen to your podcast, more of you, all of your resources, all of your things.
Yeah. You can listen to me over at Moms at Work, where we just talk about, and we just like, the heart is to encourage moms, like to just be a voice of like, not even reason, but just a friend. Like I'm working, you're working, maybe we can work together, like that kind of thing, and just kind of encourage you in your day-to-day life. And that's here on the Christian Parenting. Search it in your Apple podcast player or any podcast player, Moms at Work. And then you can follow me on Instagram, Jeanette freaking Tapley. I did that out of an act of rebellion, and I stand by it. My mom hates that I did that, and I'm 38 years old, and I was like, and you can follow me on TikTok at Jeanette Tapley, or go to my website JeanetteTapley.com, and that has anything and everything for you.
I will put all that in show notes so that people can find you, of course. Perfect. Thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate your time and everything you do for this podcast and your friendship. I appreciate your friendship too.
You're a joy, and I am so thankful to just share a little bit of insight.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so glad that you were able to meet Jeanette. Go check out her podcast, Moms at Work, and all of her resources. I have all that linked in show notes for you. I really love Jeanette's vulnerability in sharing so much of her story and her emphasis on the need for parents to trust God and have faith during difficult times, because eventually we will all have difficult times in parenting, so we have to depend on the Lord to help us and our kids through it. Don't forget to tune into Moms at Work podcast. It's for moms working inside and outside of the home. You're going to love it. May God bless you this week. May you find joy in your parenting season, whatever that looks like. May you remember that God is the source of true joy. So no matter what you feel in this moment, God has you. You were made for this job as mom and dad, and you are doing a great job. Thank you so much for listening to the Christian Parenting Podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you love this podcast, would you please consider leaving a review and sharing it with a friend? This is the best way to reach more people and encourage even more parents. Christian Parenting is a donor-funded ministry, and we rely on friends like you to keep podcasts like this going. So to find out more about Christian parenting and to make a donation, head over to christianparenting.org or at christianparenting_org on Instagram. Thank you again. See you next week.